Hello and welcome to another Overlord lore video, this time with some more lore on the most recent light novel. And today, we will focus on the War of Annihilation against the Re-Estize Kingdom, which basically is a nationwide splatfest with undead directed by floor guardians instead of goats. But before we do so, I say thanks to my patrons for supporting this channel. Also, spoiler alert. Now, the end of a nation usually has many reasons. In case of the Roman Empire, overextension, decadence, barbaric invasions, troubles with the Huns, the division into a Western Roman Empire which died and was usurped by Proto-Germany and Proto-France under Charlemagne, and an eastern part that survived another 1,000 years before the walls of Constantinople fell to cannon barrages. And similarly, the succession crisis, the ongoing decade-long war against the empire, the declining economy, the decadence caused by the plenty of natural resources and favorable geography could be mistaken for the culprit of this downfall. But in actuality it was just Philippe being Philippe. But how did somebody like him manage to rise to such a position of prominence that his actions alone could cause a war? Ever since Nesric became active within the kingdom's borders, the internal political situation experienced two major shifts. The first one occurred during the 6th volume, while the nobility hid themselves in their mansions. And the oldest prince, Prince Barbaro, did the same. King Ramposa III, despite his age and his wounds, rode out at the head of his forces to relieve the struggling adventurers amidst the demonic incursion, and Barbaro's younger half-brother, Prince Zanak, also presented himself on the outside, and thus the royal faction favoring Prince Zanak's ascension to the throne gained a considerable amount of popularity and political influence, while the noble faction that favored Prince Barbaro found itself in a steep decline. As a reaction to this pressure, the noble faction tried to test the newfound power of the royal faction at every opportunity, and thus the king couldn't afford to show any sign of weakness. A political climate that ultimately prevented the king to fully heed Gazev's warning about Ainz Ooal Gown. Instead of at least further researching the power of the mysterious castle that demanded Irantel and the land surrounding it, territory directly held by the king, His Royal Highness instead heeded the advice of his court and merely put 10,000 men aside to deal with the cast there. Had the situation been different and the king not in a situation of playing chicken with the nobles, he maybe would be able to cede Irantel without a fight, while his loss of territory would be painful to say the least. The new-founded buffer state would prevent any incursions from the empire, because in the mind of pretty much everybody else, an alliance between the living and the dead surely couldn't be a stable one. But with things as they were, the last annual war happened and the Dark Young of the Sorcerer King annihilated the royal army, destroying the king's political capital, the military power, and the already struggling economy of the nation. However, the devastating losses also prevented the re-emergence of the noble faction. Together with the royal one, they had lost too many leaders, allies, and family heads, and thus they couldn't act upon the political vacuum. The gap the loss of many first and second-born sons has created were hastily filled with spares. Sons of noble families never intended to wield power, or indeed to even receive a warm meal. These far less educated, experienced, but incredible power-hungry upstarts now formed a faction of their very own. This unification of the political dim-witted was secretly organized by Hilmar, and by extent the rest of the Eight Fingers as well as Albedo, who controlled their every move. A keystone of this plan was the nomination of a downright idiotic leader, incapable of grasping in essentially any political intrigues, processes, and even proper etiquette. The name of this walking manifestation of incompetence was no other than Philippe. With the kingdom's military and economy devastated, and the political situation more and more controlled by the Sorcerer Kingdom, Albedo then employed a strategy of carrot and stick, rewarding a submissive attitude with mercy after the previously harsh punishment of defiance handed out by Ainz Ooal Gown's goats. And by the way the strategy was phrased referenced something very specific from Germany's history after the German unification and the founding of the Second German Empire, in order to stabilize the rule of the newly crowned Prussian Emperor, as well as to prevent the workers from undermining the monarchy and social order. Otto von Bismarck employed a strategy of Zuckerbrot und Peitsche, literally translating to sweetbread and whip, by offering state-granted social benefits to the workers on one hand, while simultaneously implementing laws to limit their political power. And the same strategy, albeit against an entire nation, and ultimately in the favor of a different king, is employed by Nezarec against Re-Estize, by on one hand devastating their military power and economy, taking Irantel, the only real defense against invasions, while on the other hand reaching out to them, attending festivities and establishing formal diplomatic relationships, as well as importing and storing grain in the capital of the kingdom. If things had been going according to plan, then the three factions in the kingdom, like the three superstates in George Orwell's dystopic novel 1984, would just have blockaded each other's power gains, thus keeping themselves in a state of perpetual balance, until Renna, who has been secretly prepared to take over, replaces the dim-witted waste of space with the name of Philippe. The sudden appearance of the popular but until then political powerless Renna at the top of one of the three major factions would have instantly shifted the balance of power. With her already great popularity, an adamantite adventurer team, her monstrous intellect, and the grain from the Sorcerer Kingdom, Renna could have become the first queen and led the kingdom into an age of peace and plenty under the protection of the infinitively wise and just Sorcerer King. At least this is my theory for what would have happened if it hadn't been for Philippe. But as Demiurge once fittingly remarked, it is so much easier to predict the moves of a reasonably smart man than of a complete Philippe. And my god, Philippe has been a complete Philippe the entire time, deducting that he stands to profit from attacking a couple of carriages, traveling under the Sorcerer Kingdom's flag with grain intended as humanitarian aid for the struggling northern part of the Holy Kingdom, because the way he sees it, he will not only be able to sell the grain, but also reap the political esteem for bravely standing up to the Sorcerer Kingdom, and therefore he ambushed the traders of the Eight Fingers, a suicidal maneuver even under normal circumstances. And the surprised and utterly confused guys indeed gave up their cargo, fearing that the ambush is due to internal strife within the Eight Fingers, because before Albedo had taken them over, they tried to undermine another in order to get an advantage out of it. And speaking of the Sorcerer Kingdom's Prime Minister, this attack on the carriage had thrown off Albedo's plan completely. Had she made a mistake? Had Hilma and the rest of the Fingers betrayed her? And why would they do something so stupid? Had she been too gentle? Were the cockroaches too small and satiated? Had another outside faction intervened in order to undermine the efforts of the Sorcerer Kingdom? What exactly went wrong? In order to find out what just had happened, she invited Hilma. Upon arriving, the CEO of the Fingers went almost mad with fear, but luckily for her, Ainz not only removed any doubt about her loyalty via magic, he also showed his more magnanimous side. And he even theorized that the attack perhaps wasn't a deliberate act carried out by a hostile party, but essentially just like the birth of Philippe itself, a tragic, ill-planned and regrettable act without much thought put into it. But speaking of accidents, upon discussing what is to be done, Ainz had asked his floor guardians if their strategy of sweetbread and whip has truly failed. But the guardian misunderstood the question and concluded that if the empire surrendered and became a vassal state, and therefore was spared, the kingdom, who even after split didn't join the Sorcerer Kingdom out of their own free will, has to be punished accordingly. Its annihilation shall signal to anybody around them that they could either surrender and live, or stay defiant and die, and then be resurrected. And with this conclusion reached, Nezarec prepared itself for war. And before I end this video, I wanted to remark that I had planned to go over the background essentially in minutes, and then straight to the various battles. But judging by this video, the war alone will become a multi-part series, and at the end of it, I will have to make another map in order to take the changes into account, as well as to illustrate the invasion itself. And with that said, thank you very much for watching. And special thanks to Adam J, Al Capone, Andy, Angel of Death, Bad Guy Yi, Boyzilla, Chrissy, Diabetic Centaur, Dystopia, Elika Birch Leaf, Feli Skatis, Feral Shivan, Gigafight, Ghost of Epicness, Hector Marino, Hoss, Jason, Kleinator, Chromius, Larch, Lord Touch Me, Lord Ulbert Elaine Oddle, Lou Says Ollie, Majima, Matt C, Marcos, Mr. Shoes, Mindless Wrath, Minnow 13, Mirtis, Primus 11, Sasuga Einsama, Sebastian, Shadow Lightning Wolf, Search, Sparkly Unicorn, Vash Hawkeye, and Zoggo, Bane of a Lot. Thanks guys. Anyway, have a nice day, over and out.